Are we way late or what? Well, we're glad to be here. Lots of things have happened. I've been quite sick, my husband and I both, but we're doing much better, and the Lord had given me a message, and I just wanted to be on. And I'm sorry I sound a little rough here on my throat and all, but I'm going to give it my very, very best. You pray for me. I believe the Lord's going to help us because He is my helper. So we just trust Him right now to minister to you and to all of us today, that we can be more like Him and just learn today. And I do believe that my little doggies are having a little issue out there. Looks like they've settled down for now. They won't be interrupting us maybe. The title of the message the Lord has given to me was Recovery. Just as soon as I had finished the message last week, well, I was really surprised. Before I'd even asked the Lord, what do you have for next week, which I always do that, but I hadn't even asked yet, and the Lord dropped this word recovery. I thought, one word, recovery. Well, and of course the first thing I thought about was recovering from the car accident, what that was like. And we will allude to that today, but I want to talk about another thing that, we have to recover from sometime is the hurts that we go through from even maybe in the Christian community. I think we have to deal with those. We have to talk about that. Maybe we don't want to talk about it sometime, but let's talk about that. How do we recover from those things? And Jesus Christ is our example. I'm telling you what, if anybody knew what it was to be hurt, to be deceived, people, they would deceive him. They would be pretenders. At the same time, there would be others then, how that, that he was denied by Peter, but we find out how that Peter became one of the greatest, one of his best supporters. He became a great leader in the church. So anyway, we're going to deal with some of those things today, but let's go right into our scripture reading. We're going to go to a time, this is in 1 Samuel chapter 30 and verse 18 and 19. So David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives, and nothing of theirs was lacking, either small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything which they had taken from them. David recovered all. And I love too when you go on and read, I believe it's in the next verse, which I didn't put that one down, but it talked about he actually got spoiled. And I'm thankful for that. He was able to get, oh yes, it does say, and sons and daughters spoil or anything which they had taken. And nothing of theirs was lacking. So he got the spoil too. He actually, and that was what you could do when you won. You could take what they had, and he did that. And so we need to talk about that, recovering everything. Recovery. What is recovery like? And I thought there are a number of things that entails recovery, but it can be a health issue. It can be, like in our case, a car accident, and then the relationships. We're going to talk about the process. This is the thing. If it was just instantaneous, it would be so wonderful, but it isn't. The Lord, He helps us in that we grow. We grow. It doesn't. And I know there are instant healings. I know that. I've experienced that, and I know many people have. But relationships, recovering them. But let's talk about the things that we could think. Right now, you may have been, and say like we have a lady in our church that's had a knee replacement surgery, and what's she going? She's she's recovering from that, and it's quite an ordeal for her. She's had a hard time, but she's very very diligent, and she's going to get there before it's over with. She's going to accomplish her goal. But recovery is a difficult thing. It takes time, and it takes effort, and it probably takes money, and it may take machines, it may take whatever to get to the recovery, to get well. I'm just thankful that in the process, pray even though you barely can sometime. I know when we were after the car accident that we were in, it was Friday, January 8th, 2021, and I didn't realize how seriously injured at the time because it didn't show up at that time. I had subdural injury. Subdural, people didn't realize that was the brain. But as they slowly were forming, I began to lose ability to do a number of things. And this is what, and I became where it was hard for me to even pray, even know how to pray. And as I would try to seek the Lord, but let's just write, I don't want to be jumping around here, but I'm thinking about David when I was reading today what he went through when he had gone to, he'd been in battle, and he had left, they'd all left their families safe. They thought they were all in a safe place. But when they returned from the battle, no, Ziklag, where they had their families, they had all been left and it had been destroyed by fire. They were devastated, and their family was all, what did they do? They turned on David. He was their leader. They turned on him. He had lost, he didn't have his family either. They had all been, fortunately they had not been killed, but they had burned the city, left with everything, and their families and all, and they were devastated. They turned on him, and they were ready to stone him. Could he help it? No, he couldn't, but here's what he did. The Bible said he encouraged himself in the Lord. He encouraged himself in the Lord. I'm just so thankful that we can do that. That is the place to go, is to the Lord. You know, he found the Lord, he trusted in God, and he found that the Lord was a safe place. He is our safe place. And as he trusted in the Lord, and the Lord guided him and directed him, and before it was over with, there was a gentleman that was able to lead them to those people that had done this. There he recovered all, his entire family. But he prayed, and he had asked God, should he go? And the Lord had guided him and told him, yes, he would be with him. And he went, and that's when he found him. He was able to recover all, and then he would get all of the spoil. But this is the key, is that the battle may be hard, and you may feel it's impossible, but the best thing is to always encourage yourself in the Lord. I remember after we'd had the accident, and I had been to where I lost the ability to dress myself. I didn't know how to button my clothes. I didn't know how to I couldn't get in and out of the car by myself. I became physically unable to do that because of the 2 hematoma. They were pretty large, and we didn't know at the time that that's what I had. But we knew I kept losing the ability to do a number of things. It was like you just flipped the light out on that part of my brain. And things that I should have been able to do, I should have been able to figure out, I couldn't figure out. And I just wrote down a list of some things. My apologies again for the, but I didn't know how to fix my hair. I didn't know how to use the curling iron. I didn't know how to put on my deodorant without looking in the mirror. So my husband was having to dress me. He was having to help me in every way. And my hand-eye coordination was off. I sat down to play the piano, and I couldn't even begin to coordinate that. And just like to go to my charger, I just the cord for my charger on my phone, I would go to wind that up to put it back in my purse. I couldn't figure out how to do it. I couldn't do it to save my neck. And tying my shoes, I could not tie my shoes. And so I couldn't ride. I lost the ability to ride. It was devastating. And I remember how that one day in prayer, I would tell George to get me. At the same time, I want you to know my husband was suffering so much himself, and he said, it's my heart. And he couldn't convince the doctor that it was his heart. And he kept on. He was so sick, having so much trouble. He was having to do everything. He was having to cook. He was having to clean. He was having to dress me. He had to get me in and out of bed. I could not. And anybody that knows me knows I'm one of the most independent people you will ever know. And it was so humiliating. I thought, I've been dressing myself since I was a toddler. Who hasn't? And not to be able to do anything for myself. I can't do anything for my husband. I can't cook. I can't clean. I can't do anything. And because I was so unstable. But it was at that time, remember, you learn a lot of things. To be dependent on the Lord. Laura, good to have you on. And so I remember in those times, God was so close when I tell my husband, I've got to go pray. And he would be so sick and himself, and we didn't know. He thought it was his heart, couldn't convince the doctor. But he would be so weary. And I was telling him, but I've got to go pray. Just get me back to my prayer room. And he graciously got me back to my prayer room. And I remember as I called out to God, and I realized we're in such a situation here, I thought, if something, we could wind up in a care center in the shape that we're in. And here we were. I thought, we have our house, and, we have our pets. You think of all kinds of things. And it was, so my husband was so weary, and I said, if you can get me back there. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. And he got me back there. It got me in my prayer room. And as I called out to the Lord, I didn't hardly know how to pray. And I said, Lord, I feel guilty. I don't even hardly know how to pray. And the Lord just spoke to my heart. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. I rested in that. He knew I wasn't well. And just like a child, a parent doesn't expect a whole lot out of their child when they're sick. The Lord understood that. And I could rest in that. I didn't write the dates down. I do have the date on my phone, but I don't have it in my memory. I didn't write it down. It was in February, though, of that year that when I called out to the Lord. Well, I remember one day that's when I wrote down, when he spoke to me and said, the storm has passed. And that's what I'm talking about now. The storm may have passed, but you've got the recovery. The recovery. There's work in recovering. The hard work was the recovering. And I'm so thankful the Lord was there to help me in the recovery. No, I didn't know how to fix my hair. I didn't know what to do with the curling iron. You think that's normal, you should know. And I was thinking, these are things that you just, by rote, you're going to do them. Because you do this all of the time. You've been dressing yourself since you was a toddler. You can do it. You can't. When that part of your brain is shut off by that hematoma, no ma'am, no sir, it's not happening. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to do it. But I'm telling you, the Lord was gracious. Well, I just had me a little cap I put on. At least I didn't have to see the mess. I got to where it was a miserable situation, but yet I was hearing from God, and I was reading His Word every day. And as I stayed, and He said to me, the storm has passed. I knew the storm has passed, but now there was work to be done. I didn't know how I was going to do it. And when they finally had, in March, they had realized they better do an MRI. And that's when they found out how serious the situation was. And only through a miracle of God did I survive. I don't know, as the doctors told me, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. And that's this one, the neurosurgeon. I never had to have surgery, but the neurosurgeon, when he looked at everything, he says it's a miracle of God. God has given you a miracle. He said these hematomas never drain on their own. It never doesn't happen. He said I have to go in and I have to burrow a little hole in there for them to drain. But he said, God has given you a miracle. Yours have drained. They were draining. They were in the process of draining. Little by little, I began to be able to do things. But in the meantime, I had like a friend I called, can you come fix my hair? I was humiliated. I didn't want to go to church looking like this. And she came to the house and would fix my hair. But finally I was able, I wanted to wait until I could walk on my own. But I walked in leaning on my husband, I'm sure, quite heavily. But it was a joy to be able to finally walk. Each victory, the day I was able to dress myself for the first time all by myself, it took 4 hours by the clock. But it was a joy of victory. I called one of my sisters and said, I dressed myself today. It took me 4 hours. And she burst out laughing. And she said, oh, I'm sorry, it sounded funny. 4 hours by the clock, that is a long time. But I'd get tangled up in my clothes trying to get them on. And I couldn't figure out how to do it. And that seems impossible. I know that seems like, say, listen, that wouldn't happen to me. I never dreamed it would happen to me, that I couldn't figure that out. But it did. So you learn a lot of things that you begin to appreciate. But the victory was so sweet when little by little, as I could, and I remember one time when I was praying and reading the Bible, managed to read, I was reading the scriptures, trying to read it, and man, he told him to reach out. When Jesus told him to reach out his hand, and that's what, and so I just physically reached out, and that's what I was reaching out to the Lord, and that's how little by little I was gaining victory after victory. And I just like David recovered all. There came a time when it was all over with. It took months, but I had recovered all, and today that is the case. Now my husband, that was in January that accident happened. In April, when he finally convinced the cardiologist, he told him, it's only when I spray this stuff under my tongue, he said, that I get relief. Pardon me. He said, it is your heart. And they did an angiogram, and the place that's called the widowmaker in the heart was completely plugged up. Many people die from that. That's why it's called the widowmaker. There again, over and again, my husband had to help me, he had to lift me. Through a miracle of God, he survived. During that recovery process, he needed help himself. I couldn't help him. I couldn't help him, and he was almost helpless to help me. But he was so busy helping me, God, some way miraculously helped him and helped us. We recovered all. When he had the surgery, by the time he had that, I was able to drive. I was able to drive down to the hospital and stay with him during the day. This was when all the COVID restrictions were on, but I was allowed to stay until 6 o'clock in the evening. Victory was oh so sweet to recover all. I want to talk about these things that when hurts that we have. Let me put my rolls over here now. Now I did check my rolls and make sure they were alive. They are alive. I mean this dough now, but it is alive. So I'll put it over here now, and I'm going to put my oven on 250. And it's on 250, and I'm going to let it. Gotta get me another. I didn't have this quite arranged today. Okay. And I'm going to always put a wrap over it, because if air hits it like that, it will fall completely. Okay. What about other hurts? When people have done things to you, when they have lied on you, there can be people that have cost you a raise, or they have cost. I couldn't even begin and wouldn't even try to go into all of the many hurts and things. And this is something that every one of us have to deal with. We've been hurt. We've had maybe lies and things. And so what the Lord encouraged me to do recently, there was a woman that I know that literally her name is synonymous with lying. That's what I mean when she's mentioned. In fact, if they talk about somebody lies, they'll say, yeah, she's another, and they'll call that woman's name. And the Lord has spoke to my heart the other day to pray for her. And that's what, yes, I had been hurt by her, horrible lies. And when I went to her, the Lord directed me to go to her. She acknowledged that what I told her to do this. I said, the Lord told me to tell you, this is what you need to do for victory. And she said, that's exactly what the Lord told me to do. And she hadn't done it. As far as I know, never did do it. But what do you do when these hurts, especially you have to be around people? And I definitely don't claim to know all of the answers. I don't know. Oh, yes, I do know the answer is Jesus Christ. And this is what I want to mention, that I noticed with Jesus, he was hurt over and over again. But he never stopped reaching out. He never stopped. And he walked this earth like a human. He was a human. It wasn't like, oh, we think, oh, well, that was Jesus Christ, the Son of God. You know, but he walked this earth as a human. You know, he wasn't here as, you know, he just like, here I am, Jesus. I mean, he didn't come out appearing like we see. You know, he was here in flesh is what I'm trying. He was in flesh. He looked just like us, and he knew what it was to feel and go through what we went through. There is nothing that we go through but what he knows that. And we may think, oh, but that was Jesus. But there again, he was in the flesh. He was not in the spirit being we think of, that we know of it. But how that he was our example, I thought, no one has ever suffered what you did, Lord. It was village after village, and he had supposed to be the church family. It was supposed to be, and it was the church leaders that were supposed to have been helping behind him, but they were not. They were behind him to kick him. They were in front of him to kick him. They were everywhere. They was going before him and after him to kick him down and tell about how horrible he was and how awful, that he was a liar, and he was a liar, that he was of the devil, all of those things. But you know what he kept doing? He kept reaching out and touching people. I remember a pastor's wife telling me one time when we were in evangelistic work, she said, well, I don't get close to my people. You know, I don't ever, she doesn't want to get close to them. People, they say, well, I've been hurt and I don't want to get hurt again. You know what? I'm glad Jesus wasn't like that. And I'm not saying get over it, it's okay. I don't know what you've been through. But every one of us have been through something. And what Satan wants to do, and the Lord just impresses on my heart today. You know, what the devil wants to do, and he will do, the hurt you have, he will go over them, and he will blow them up bigger and bigger and bigger. Will you get hurt again? Yes, I can promise you, you will get hurt again. There is not a hurt that we have been through that Jesus doesn't know about. I think about how he was denied, how he was betrayed. Denied by a friend, and then betrayed, was supposed to be his friends. And yet, he kept reaching and touching others, always reaching out, because everybody is not going to resist you. There will be those that will accept you. There was far fewer that accepted Jesus as those that rejected him. Far fewer accepted him, but that's who he had come to seek and to save, that which was lost. And they were all lost, but so few wanted to accept him. But that's the ones he was able. He could cleanse their hearts, take their sins away, and guide them and help them. They could teach and train their families, and he had to train the disciples, and they went out. And so here we are even to this day. And I wanted to mention one thing, and this is possibly a closing for this. I heard Pastor Candy Christmas tell a true account that just really touched my heart. She told about a friend of hers that was a singer. He had a friend that was a heart surgeon, and this heart surgeon told him that he could watch one of the heart surgeries. They had a place they went in. It was like a little place there where they could be away, because it was, of course, closed off, and you just went into this room and you could see there. But at the close, so the surgery had gone well, and that the doctor, as he said told this woman, because when they went to shock her heart, it didn't start beating. So he said he got down and he whispered into her ear where they could hear him, and he said to her, you know, ma'am, said your surgery has gone well, everything has gone well, everything just looks really good, and said we need you to tell your heart to beat again. I love it. So her heart began to beat again. And I thought, you know, that's what time the Lord is saying to us, let your heart beat again. Instead of saying, I don't want to get hurt, I'm going to stay back, I'll just get hurt again. If we plan on that and we think like that, Jesus is not going to hurt us. Others may. Not everybody's going to hurt us. Somebody will receive us. And just, like I said, I don't know what everyone has been through, but what I want to do is keep doing what Jesus did, keep reaching out, move to someone else when if they rebel and resist, don't want, it's okay, go on. I'm sorry that they don't accept, but I want to move on and keep reaching out. Perhaps the next person will be the one that will be receptive and will receive the Lord with joy and gladness. That's what we want to do, is just tell our heart to beat again and keep reaching out. I remember when my cousin was preaching the funeral of his own mother, and that's what has stayed with me from that funeral. This is the one thing that he said. He's a preacher, and when he finished, a piece of people are asking me, well, what are you going to do now after losing your mother and this horrible, disfiguring disease she had, and what an awful thing it had been, and I don't know, it had been a very lengthy thing. And I didn't even recognize her in the casket. She didn't even look like her at all. But they had asked him, so they were asking me, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now after all of this? He said, I'm going to do what Jesus did. I'm going to keep touching people. I'm going to keep reaching out. That's, of all the things he said, that's the one thing I remember. And I really believe the Lord wanted me to hear that. Maybe perhaps for such a day as this, I've used it again and again. Keep reaching out to people. Keep loving the Lord and serving Him with all of your heart. Linda, it's glad to see you on. All right, so I know my voice has been raspy and this has not been the best, but I've given it my best, and today is a rough day. But my husband and I are both much better. But one other thing in my notes here that I didn't get to, and I want to be sure and say this. One thing that Jesus did, and you know, he was treated so terribly. Nobody knows what all that he went through. But what we read in the scriptures, what we do have, was horrible how he was treated. But you know how he made it? Like I said, we need to get alone with God. He came apart. He came apart before he came apart. He got alone. That's why he told the disciples one time, and they'd been through what all, and he said, well, I'm going up to the mountain. I'm going to pray. I'm going apart. You know what he was going to do? He was going to be alone with his Father. Why? Because he had been hurt and hurt and hurt and hurt. They add up. Those hurts add up. You don't just say, oh, I don't know, words don't hurt me. Oh, yes, they do. Yes, they do. We know that. Don't lie about it. They do. And saying that doesn't hurt, ignoring it is not the answer. What did Jesus do? Jesus Christ, the Son of God, when he walked this earth, he taught us the answer is to go do the mountain, go to the Lord. And he went up and he would be praying. And while he was there, he looked out and he saw they were in a storm and all. You know, before he finished his prayer time, then he went down and took care of them. But he didn't say, oh, I've got to leave now, I got to leave. No, he went ahead and took care of the prayer time. He knew they were okay. The Heavenly Father was watching over them. But you know what? He got down there in time. And that's what we can't stay 24/7 out here on the earth. I mean, we're on earth, but we better get into our prayer room somewhere and get us alone with God. And what did David do in the example I gave from 1 Samuel, chapter 30? When they were going to stone him, his own people were going to stone him, their leader. He encouraged himself in the Lord. That's what we have to do. Encourage ourselves in the Lord. God's word is what will carry us through. Psalm 55 and 22 says this, cast your burden on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He shall never permit the righteous to be moved. That's from the New King James Version. And remember this, and you know what I always say. For it is God who is at work within you, giving you the will and the power to achieve his purpose. That is from Philippians chapter 2, verse 13 in the, that's a J.B. Phillips translation. In another scripture that I have been using, and I see that it didn't pick up on here, but it is about the work of righteousness shall be peace, and the effect of righteousness, quietness, and assurance forever. And I forget exactly where that is found, and I apologize for that. Well, it's been good to be with you, and I know this sinusitis caused my husband and I a lot of grief. My birthday was actually Tuesday. That's what the flowers are all about. And we were sick, but he wanted me to go and take me out for a steak. And at that time, I still could taste things. The next day or two, I couldn't taste anything. So we did have a good time. The Lord has blessed us, blessed me with 75 years, and I'm thankful for that. I want to honor Him with my whole heart, love Him and serve Him. Whether I'm well or sick, I'm going to serve the Lord with joy and gladness. So we look forward to being with you next Friday, the Lord willing, on time. And was way behind today, just simply was not able to get around. But I'm thankful the Lord. The longer I've been up, the better I feel. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and I want His face to just shine upon you. The joy of the Lord. The joy of the Lord is our strength. We love you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.